Hi, it's Recovering Hedonist, and today I'll be reading from a script again in order to keep my thoughts cohesive as well as stay on topic. Let's get into it. From the name of my channel, you can surmise that I, Recovering Hedonist, am turning away from a debaucherous lifestyle. And one aspect of life that Jesus has saved me from is porn addiction. I started young, very young, which unfortunately is quite common these days. To be exact, I was 10 years old when I first began watching. Well, I was looking at pictures first, but still. I began with lesbian porn, and eventually I began to look at straight porn and a multitude of other categories. Basically, if you name the type of porn category, I likely have seen it, unfortunately. Like, I recognize a lot of porn stars when they're used in like reaction GIFs underneath, let's say, like Instagram posts, or if they're mentioned by name. I even recognized a redheaded porn actress in a Ross when I was only 11 or 12 years of age, and I wanted to ask her for a photo with her, but figured she would find that weird since I was obviously a kid, so I did not go up to her. Pornography gets seared into your brain, especially when you absorb so much of it at a young age. I even had a therapist at the age of around 21 to 22 years old send me a study after I had divulged to her the extent of my porn consumption. She sent me a study where watching pornography under the age of 12 can cause permanent brain damage, as well as altering and changing what you are sexually attracted to or sexually attracted by or from. I quickly got addicted to the sin of lust and became a full-on porn addict by the age of 11 in 6th grade. In 6th grade, I would spend hours in bed looking at such content and edging myself, to be frank. I say this to show how perverse this addiction is, that it can quickly consume a child's mind and lead to obscure sexual desires and fantasies and whatnot. I don't want to go in too much detail about what type of stuff I was consuming, because I feel like that can be very triggering for people that are in active porn addiction and trying to recover. So I may delve into that more so in another video. This is more just the general details of my addiction. By the time I was 15, I had admitted to myself that I was a porn addict, and this began to greatly disturb me. I always knew to hide what I was watching, and I managed to never get caught, despite masturbating all the time. Despite this, my addiction was tormenting my mind so badly that I confided in my mother about my embarrassing problem at 15. I had become a Christian around this time, but around the age of 17, I fell away from Christ and abandoned God for a long time despite still believing in God. I had left the beliefs of the Bible and thus fell even further into the sin of lust in ways I may explore later on in future videos. No matter what, I just couldn't stay away from porn, even though I knew it was hurting my mind and soul in numerous ways. By the time I was 21, living in my own apartment and finishing up college, I was watching every single day without fail, as I had been doing for a decade. I guess 11 years at that time, to be exact. I was in a lot of pain at 21 years old over my porn addiction and how consuming it was and the things that I was watching, and I felt a great deal of shame despite not even being a Christian at this time. I viewed my addiction as follows: this is my problem to fix. I need to be the one to fix this. I need to be strong enough. Me. Noticing a problem? 10 years after being 15, admitting to myself and my mother that I was a porn addict and I needed help, 10 years after this, at the age of 25, I have now figured out, by the grace of God, why it never worked beforehand when I tried my best to be strong enough to resist temptation. I wasn't giving it to God. I was trying to stop such a strong addiction by myself with my own human strength, which is weak, and not enough to combat such an aggressive action of lust. This brings to mind the verse of Psalm 55:22. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. The final answer: the only way to defeat porn addiction is to ask God for help. Seriously. Like, you cannot sustain your progress in this kind of rampant addiction without his aid. I don't care how normalized watching porn has become in today's world. It isn't okay. I've had therapists in the past, the same one that sent me that study. I would tell her how broken inside and beaten down upon that I felt inside due to my porn consumption. And she was saying, well, watching porn is okay, but if you feel that way, then you should view it as self-harm, and therefore that should be your guiding force to not look at it. I continue to harm myself by watching this content because as humans, we are simply not strong enough. And I'm sure this therapist meant well, but not even being a Christian at that point, I knew in my heart that it was wrong what I was watching. It was wrong to do it every day and to be such a slave to watching that kind of stuff. I knew it was wrong. So don't buy into people saying, well, everybody watches it. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. Everybody's watching it, even kids. Like, I'm Gen Z. I can only imagine how accessible it is now for Gen Alpha, because it was so easily accessible for me. I can only imagine now. But it isn't okay, like I was saying, not for those watching and not for those participating in making this kind of content. I haven't even gone into the whole sex trafficking element of a lot of pornography and the women filmed in this, nor have I dove into the topic of barely legal porn categories and incestuous genres that are extremely prevalent and popular worldwide. These elements of pornography and the intensity of porn addiction will be brought up at a later date on my channel, as I have said that I have a 15-year experience with combating porn, with viewing it and trying to combat it, and it's only at the age of 25 that I've really gotten a hold on it, thanks to God. I plan to do more in-depth videos on the topic of pornography, as I'm really feeling urged to talk about this, since I am well versed on the topic, and I'm just being honest here because I don't ever want to be that type of Christian that acts like I don't have a bad past and that I haven't done really awful things. I have, and I hope with the Recovering Hedonist channel, that's very obvious, and I show that there is a future ahead of you, that you don't need to let your bad past keep you from trying to get in communion with God and get closer to Him. Even if you are actively struggling with this, run to God, because He's really our only way out of this, and He's our only saving grace in this wretched world. I felt as a woman it would be even more meaningful for me to speak out on my past with a pornography addiction, as well as a masturbation addiction, starting even younger. I didn't really delve into this, but on the topic of masturbation, I'm at the point now where I don't even really have the urge to masturbate, and it just feels like weird to actually do it. And I think because the time that I started masturbating and then the time that I started watching pornography every day is basically around the same exact time. So yeah, there were times in my past when I would engage in masturbation without the use of porn, but then, I'm still in my thoughts thinking. And that's not right either. We don't want to commit the act of adultery or fornication in our hearts, lusting after people, men or women. So, I think it is really part of God's plan for me to help me to not be addicted to masturbating anymore, like to not be totally shackled to that. I felt the desire flee from me. I don't really want to do that anymore. And I do think a large part of that is because I did it so much and so often since childhood that it kind of lost its appeal. And maybe that's like too out there or too honest to say, but really that's how I feel. At least I did it so much so often that it lost its appeal, and I don't really want to do that anymore. Now, with all of this being said, this doesn't mean that I have not fallen into temptation this past year and a half, that I have come back to the faith and reunited with Christ again. I have slipped and fallen, and the shame and regret and utterly soul-destroying guilt has eaten me up each time. Even though it's only about 3 times or so that I recall relapsing within this past year and a half. I'm not trying to like fully downplay this when I say it like that, like only 3 times. But to put it in perspective, when I was 21, I was tormented by my daily porn use despite seeing myself as an ex-Christian at the time. I held a belief that I would never be able to go a single day without watching porn. By giving this addiction to God and asking Him for help, I was humbling myself before Him and admitting that I was not strong enough to fight this on my own. Throughout the Bible, God mentions how He lifts up the humble while putting down the proud. It's best to keep humility in mind when tackling any addiction, but especially with one as profuse as pornography. Basically, all people are struggling from this addiction nowadays. Porn is just one click away, really. It is free. It isn't stuck behind a paywall, despite platforms like OF being so popular. It's all free. Paying for it is truly bizarre, but I digress. Lust is a sin that needs to be actively fought, in the sense that you need to flee from it, but you need to fight it spiritually. So when I say that you need to fight this addiction, I mean that you need to ask God to help you fight it. I don't mean that you should fight it on your own, because as I said, I did that in the past and it didn't end up well. I always failed. So it's a very much a spiritual battle, and you should pray about it every time you have these desires, because the times that I haven't prayed about it, I knew that there was a way out of the temptation, because God doesn't tempt us. It's our own sinful desires that provoke these sort of thoughts to come up. It's not God tempting us. And I didn't want to ask for His help because I felt like, well, it's been so long, like let me give in, which was just completely wrong. And like I said, I felt the true weight of that guilt and shame after relapsing. Lust is a sin that has engulfed a large chunk of my life, whether in real life or online. Me being able to go through life and no longer look up porn doesn't mean that the fight is over. No, I'll have to ask God to help me fight this and give me His strength to endure for as long as I live on this earth. I'd suggest you'd never get too proud about defeating your addictions. You must always give that praise to God. It is only with His help and aid that you are withdrawing from temptation or fleeing from it altogether. I'll give this advice. Whenever I get a strong urge to look up pornography when I am alone, I either say to God out loud or in my head, whichever you feel called to do, like do it that way. God can hear not only our audible words, but each of our thoughts. So you will be speaking to Him just as loudly either way. Back to my point. Either out loud or in your thoughts, ask God to give you His strength to not do it. Get on your knees and beg God to help you if you must. Because sometimes these evil desires can be lingering and more on the minuscule end, but other times they can be so strong and enticing of your sinful flesh that you are a step away from falling into this horrid sin again. I know that in my own personal experience, when the desire to look is that powerful, is when I have obeyed my desires, knowing that it will only hurt me in the end for momentary pleasure. Those times of powerful desire are when I have fallen. I try to focus in on the feelings of that regret, self-disgust, and guilt whenever I want to watch and give myself sick pleasure. Not only that, but I am newly married and have been in a long-term relationship. So it's not only sinning against my body and against God, but falling into this particular sin is also committing adultery in my heart with men and women if I am to fall again. So remember that temptation does not come from God. It comes not only from the devil, but also from our own sinful desires. Anyway, finishing up, I plan to do more in-depth videos on the topic of pornography and detailing why it's so harmful, not just as a Christian, but for everybody to consume, male and female, in differing ways. If you are currently struggling with porn addiction, my heart goes out to you. Know that the only way out is to humble yourself before God. I know that there is no way that I could have gone this long without watching pornography if I didn't ask Jesus to help me. I mean, I really owe all the glory to Him, to God. So I hope that my 15-year porn addiction testimony has helped you in some sort of way and maybe given you courage and hope that you can abstain from it. And I think it's been a good 8 months or so that I've been completely porn free. I'm not really keeping track of it like that, but like I said, I have fallen, so I don't think I'm at the full-on year mark just yet. But yes, I feel so much better not watching that stuff every day, and I'm free from it, and I continuously pray about it. And yeah, this is an addiction that is really rampant, and not only that, but it's so normalized, like I said. So yeah, you really need to give this to God, and I wish you nothing the best on your journey, and I pray that you will overcome this addiction as well. So God bless you, and good night for now.